My name is Maria Santos and I need to tell you something that will change how you see the year 2025. 3 weeks ago, I was declared clinically dead for 17 minutes after a horrific accident at the textile factory where I worked. But those 17 minutes weren't darkness or silence. They were the most vivid, terrifying, and beautiful moments of my entire existence. I was taken to a place beyond this world and shown events that are already beginning to unfold. Events that will reshape everything we know about life, death, and what's coming for humanity. I need you to understand something from the very beginning. I wasn't some deeply religious person before this happened. I went to church on Sundays, sure, but my faith was more habit than conviction. I worked double shifts to support my 3 kids, worried about bills, and honestly questioned whether God even cared about people like me. The idea that I would be chosen to receive a message from beyond seemed impossible. But sometimes God chooses the most unlikely messengers for the most urgent warnings. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I was operating the industrial sewing machine, the same one I'd worked on for 7 years. The factory was loud, filled with the usual sounds of machinery and workers calling out to each other. I remember checking the clock and seeing it was almost lunch break. That's when everything went wrong. A massive electrical surge caused the main power line to snap, sending thousands of volts through the metal framework I was leaning against. The pain was instantaneous and overwhelming. Every nerve in my body screamed as the electricity coursed through me. I could smell burning flesh and realized it was my own. The last thing I remember was hitting the concrete floor, my coworkers screaming around me. Then everything went black. Or at least that's what I expected. Instead, I found myself standing in what looked like a vast field of golden light. The pain was completely gone, replaced by a peace so profound it made me weep. I looked down at my hands and they were whole, unmarked by the electrical burns. I was wearing a simple white dress that seemed to glow with its own inner light. The field stretched endlessly in all directions, and I could hear the most beautiful music, like thousands of voices singing in perfect harmony. That's when I saw her walking toward me. My grandmother, Elalina, who had passed away when I was 12. She looked exactly as I remembered her, but younger somehow, radiant with health and joy. Her smile was the same one that had comforted me through so many childhood fears. "Mija," she said, using the pet name she'd always called me. "You're not supposed to be here yet, but there's something you need to see first." Before I could ask what she meant, the golden field began to change around us. Suddenly, we were standing on what seemed like a mountaintop, looking down at the entire world, spread out below us like a living map. I could see every country, every city, every person going about their daily lives. But there was something else too. Dark shadows moving across the surface of the earth. And wherever they touched, chaos followed. My grandmother pointed to different areas of the world. "Watch, Ma. See what's coming." I focused on the shadows and realized they weren't just random darkness. They were spiritual forces, demonic entities of incredible power and malice. They were whispering into the ears of world leaders, feeding them thoughts of pride, fear, and vengeance. I watched in horror as these whispers turned into decisions that would affect millions of lives. In one vision, I saw a man in an expensive suit signing documents while a dark figure stood behind him, its mouth pressed to his ear. The demon's words were poison, convincing him that his enemies were about to attack, that he needed to strike at first to protect his nation. The man's hand trembled as he signed what I somehow knew was an authorization for nuclear weapons deployment. In another part of the world, I saw similar scenes playing out. Leaders who should have been seeking peace were instead being driven toward war by these dark influences. The demons were patient, methodical, feeding on human fears and turning them into weapons of mass destruction. What terrified me most was how subtle it all was. These leaders thought they were making rational decisions, but they were actually being manipulated by forces they couldn't see or understand. "This is what happens when my people stop praying," a voice said behind me. I turned to see Jesus himself standing there, and I immediately fell to my knees. His presence was both overwhelming and comforting, like standing before a gentle Father who also happened to be the most powerful being in the universe. His eyes held such love and sadness that I began to weep again. "Lord," I whispered, "what can be done? How can this be stopped?" He gestured toward the world below us. And suddenly I could see something different. Points of light scattered across every continent, some bright, some dim, but all connected by golden threads that pulsed with energy. "These are my faithful ones," he said. "Every light represents someone who truly prays, who seeks my face with genuine faith. Their prayers are the only thing holding back complete destruction." I watched in amazement as the golden threads formed networks across the globe. Where these prayer networks were strongest, the dark shadows retreated. Where they were weak or broken, the darkness pressed forward more aggressively. It was spiritual warfare on a scale I had never imagined, and the battlefield was the hearts and minds of humanity. Jesus showed me specific events that were already beginning to unfold. I saw massive cyber attacks that would entire nations' infrastructure. I watched as economic systems collapsed under the weight of manipulation and greed. I witnessed natural disasters that seemed to come one after another, each one more devastating than the last. But worst of all, I saw the nuclear exchanges that would begin if the current trajectory continued. When will this happen, Lord? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Soon, he replied, the signs are already manifesting. Look at your world. The hatred between nations is growing. The threats are becoming more frequent and more serious. The spiritual atmosphere is thick with demonic influence. But Maria, this is why I'm showing you this. It doesn't have to happen. He pointed to a specific area of the prayer network, and I saw something incredible. A group of people from different denominations, different backgrounds, different countries, all united in desperate prayer for peace. As they prayed, I watched one of the demons that had been whispering to a world leader suddenly recoil in pain and flee. The leader's expression changed. His hand moved away from the weapons authorization, and he picked up a phone to call for diplomatic talks instead. One person praying with genuine faith can change the course of history. Jesus said a church united in prayer can protect an entire city. A nation that truly repents and seeks my face can avoid judgment entirely. But the window is closing. Maria, time is running short. The vision shifted again, and I saw the most terrifying scene yet. Nuclear missiles launching from multiple countries simultaneously. The sky lighting up with dozens of blinding flashes. Cities disappearing in seconds. Millions of people vaporized instantly. Millions more dying slowly from radiation poisoning. The earth itself seemed to scream in agony as the very fabric of civilization unraveled. This is what will happen if my people don't wake up, Jesus said, his voice heavy with grief. This is what happens when they trust in their own strength instead of seeking mine. When they fight each other instead of fighting the real enemy. When they pray for their own comfort instead of praying for the world's salvation. But then he showed me something that gave me hope. I saw the same scene but different. Instead of nuclear fire, I saw world leaders coming together in humility. I saw enemies embracing as brothers. I saw weapons being dismantled and resources being redirected toward healing and restoration. The difference was the prayer. In this vision, the golden network of prayer had grown so strong that it completely overwhelmed the dark forces. This is what's possible. Jesus said, this is what will happen if enough of my people take prayer seriously. If they fast and seek my face with genuine repentance, if they stop fighting each other and start fighting the real battle in the spiritual realm. I felt the weight of what he was showing me. The future wasn't fixed. It could go either way depending on the choices people made right now. The responsibility was overwhelming, but so was the hope. We weren't powerless victims of fate. We were spiritual warriors with the ability to change the course of history through prayer. Jesus turned to face me fully, and his eyes burned with intensity. Maria, you must go back and tell them. Warn them that time is short. Tell them their prayers matter more than they know. Tell them that I am ready to heal their land, but they must humble themselves and seek my face. Tell them that the enemy's plan can be stopped, but only through united prayer and genuine repentance. But Lord, I said, I'm nobody special. I'm just a factory worker who's going to listen to me. He smiled and warmth flooded through me. I have always chosen the humble to confound the wise. I have always used the unexpected to accomplish my purposes. You think David was qualified to face Goliath? You think Moses was qualified to lead Israel? You think the disciples were qualified to turn the world upside down? I don't call the qualified Maria. I qualify the called. The vision began to fade. But Jesus wasn't finished. There's one more thing you must understand. This battle isn't just about preventing nuclear war. It's about the eternal souls of billions of people. The enemy knows his time is short, and he's trying to take as many souls with him as possible. Every person who dies in hatred, in fear, in unforgiveness is a victory for darkness. But every person who turns to me, even in their final moments, is a victory for light. I saw it then. Behind every political conflict, behind every act of terrorism, behind every decision that pushed the world toward destruction, there was a spiritual battle raging for human souls. The demons weren't just trying to cause physical death. They were trying to ensure spiritual death, eternal separation from God. Your prayers don't just prevent war. Jesus continued, they save souls. They break chains of bondage. They heal broken hearts. They restore families. They bring light into the darkest places. Never underestimate the power of prayer, Maria. It's the most powerful force in the universe. I felt myself being pulled away from that holy place. But Jesus reached out and touched my forehead. Instantly, I felt a surge of divine power flowing through me. "I'm giving you the strength to carry this message," he said. "I'm giving you the words to speak and the courage to speak them. Don't be afraid of those who mock you or doubt you. I will be with you always." The last thing I saw was his face filled with such love and compassion that it's burned into my memory forever. Then I was back in my body, gasping for air in the hospital emergency room. The doctors were amazed. I had been clinically dead for 17 minutes with no brain activity, no heartbeat, no respiration. By all medical standards, I should have been brain dead or suffered severe neurological damage. Instead, I was perfectly fine, more alive than I'd ever been. The burns on my body had healed to a degree that baffled the medical staff. What should have required months of recovery and multiple surgeries was already showing signs of miraculous healing. But more importantly, I was different inside. The fear that had dominated my life was gone, replaced by an unshakable faith and a burning urgency to share what I had seen. When I tried to explain my experience to the doctors, some listened politely, while others dismissed it as hallucinations caused by oxygen deprivation. But I knew what I had experienced was more real than anything in this physical world. I had been given a mission and I was going to fulfill it no matter what people thought of me. The first person I told was my oldest daughter, Carmen. She's a nurse herself, practical and logical, not easily swayed by emotional appeals. When I described my vision, she sat in stunned silence for a long time. Finally she said, "Mom, I've never seen you like this. There's something different about you. Your whole countenance has changed." She was right. I felt different. The chronic anxiety that had plagued me for years was gone. The anger I'd carried toward people who had hurt me had evaporated. Even my relationship with my ex-husband, which had been bitter for over a decade, was transformed. I found myself praying for him instead of resenting him. But more than personal transformation, I felt the weight of the message I'd been given. I started reaching out to pastors, to prayer groups, to anyone who would listen. Some embraced the message immediately and began organizing prayer meetings. Others were skeptical, asking for proof or signs. I reminded them that Jesus himself said that a wicked generation seeks after signs, but the only sign they would receive was the sign of Jonah. What amazed me was how quickly the message spread. Within days, I was receiving messages from people across the country who had heard about my experience. Many shared their own stories of prophetic dreams, visions, and spiritual encounters that confirmed what I had seen. It became clear that God was speaking to many people, not just me. I started noticing changes in world events that aligned exactly with what I had been shown. Tensions between nuclear powers escalated almost daily. Cyber attacks became more frequent and sophisticated. Economic instability spread across the globe. But I also saw the other side. Prayer meetings were springing up everywhere. People who had never prayed before were falling to their knees in desperation. Churches that had been divided for decades were coming together in unity. The most powerful moment came when I was invited to speak at a gathering of religious leaders from different denominations. Catholics, Protestants, Orthodox Christians, all putting aside their differences to pray for peace. As I shared my vision, I watched grown men weep. By the end of the evening, they had committed to organizing continuous prayer coverage with different groups taking shifts to ensure that prayer was ascending to heaven 24 hours a day. But I also encountered resistance. Some people accused me of being mentally unstable, of fabricating the story for attention. Others said I was being deceived by demons masquerading as angels of light. There were moments when the criticism was so intense that I wondered if I should just keep quiet and go back to my normal life. That's when I remembered Jesus' words about being mocked and doubted. He had prepared me for this. And whenever I felt discouraged, I would remember the vision of those nuclear missiles, the millions of people who would die if we didn't act, that kept me going when everything else wanted to stop. The most encouraging responses came from people who had been praying for years, feeling like their prayers weren't making a difference. When they heard my testimony about the golden network of prayer, about how every prayer matters and has power, they were reinvigorated. Prayer meetings that had been struggling to attract a handful of people suddenly had hundreds attending. I also noticed something else. As more people began praying seriously, I started having dreams about specific world leaders. I would see them in their private moments wrestling with difficult decisions, and I would know exactly how to pray for them. Sometimes I would dream about a leader being tormented by dark whispers, and I would wake up and immediately begin praying for God to send angels to protect their mind and heart. The results were remarkable. Several times I watched news reports of leaders who had been on the brink of making catastrophic decisions suddenly changing course. A military strike would be called off at the last minute. A diplomatic solution would be found to a seemingly impossible conflict. Each time I knew it was the result of prayer, of spiritual warfare being fought in the heavenly realm. But the vision also showed me that time was running out. The dark forces weren't giving up. They were adapting, finding new ways to influence world events. The prayer network had to grow stronger and more coordinated. It wasn't enough for individual churches or denominations to pray in isolation. There had to be unity, cooperation, and a shared understanding of what was at stake. That's why I'm sharing this message with you today. Not because I want attention or fame, but because I've seen what's coming if we don't act. I've seen the nuclear fire that will consume cities. I've seen the chaos that will follow. I've seen the millions who will die, not just physically but spiritually, separated from God for eternity. But I've also seen the hope. I've seen what happens when God's people unite in prayer. I've seen demons flee in terror when faced with genuine faith. I've seen world leaders transformed by the power of intercessory prayer. I've seen the golden network of prayer pushing back the darkness and bringing light to the world. The choice is ours. We can continue living as if everything is normal, trusting in human solutions to spiritual problems. Or we can recognize that we're in a battle for the very soul of humanity and respond with the spiritual weapons God has given us. Prayer isn't just asking God for things. It's engaging in spiritual warfare. It's taking authority over demonic forces that are trying to destroy our world. It's partnering with heaven to bring God's will to earth. It's the most powerful force available to humanity. And it's available to everyone who calls on the name of Jesus. The vision I was shown wasn't set in stone. It was a warning, a call to action, an invitation to participate in changing the course of history. But the window of opportunity won't stay open forever. The spiritual forces of darkness are working around the clock to bring about destruction. We must work just as diligently to bring about peace. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm asking you to pray and seek God's face for yourself. Fast and ask Him to show you the spiritual reality behind world events. Join with others in united prayer for peace. Put aside denominational differences and focus on what unites us. The enemy wants us divided because he knows that united we're unstoppable. The message I was given is simple but urgent. Time is short but hope remains. Prayer works but it requires faith, persistence and unity. The future of our world depends not on politicians or military leaders, but on ordinary people who are willing to get on their knees and cry out to God for mercy. I've delivered the message I was given. Now it's up to you to decide what to do with it. Will you join the golden network of prayer that's holding back destruction? Will you fast and seek God's face for your nation? Will you put aside your differences and unite with others in spiritual warfare? The choice is yours. But choose quickly. The darkness is advancing, but the light is still shining. And in God's hands, even the smallest light can push back the greatest darkness. The question is, will you be part of that light? As we stand at the threshold of 2025, these testimonies from beyond the veil serve as urgent reminders that our time for preparation is rapidly running out. The convergence of these warnings from Navy SEAL Blake Anderson, Rabbi Elav, Iranian teenager Kian Rostami, and nurse Sarah Coleman cannot be dismissed as mere coincidence. Each return with the same message. Pray like never before. Seek unity across faith lines and prepare your hearts for what lies ahead. The choice now rests with each of us to heed these final warnings and become part of the solution through fervent prayer and spiritual warfare. Will you answer the call before it's too late?